Ken, it's wonderful to have you back on the show, and we have an excellent guest today. I have wanted to speak to Christina for so long. I've known about her film. She's going to tell us all about it. But Ken, first of all, how are you today? Wonderful to see you again.
Yeah, likewise. It's good to be here. I'm sorry it's under these circumstances. There was a recent adverse ruling in the Whitmer kidnap case, which Christina's here to break down for us. But yeah, good to be with you both.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've been doing tons of great reporting on HeadlineUSA.com. We'll be getting into that. But the star of today's show is Christina. You are the director of Kidnap and Kill. Give us the background, please, if you would, Christina, for people perhaps who have not seen you before.
Oh, well, I am an independent journalist and I kind of do my own thing, stick to my own lane. I like to cover kind of underreported topics and started covering the Whitmer case and realized that that story was so big, it needed to be a film. So that led me to pursue documentary filmmaking.
Absolutely. And so is the film out yet? We're looking right now at your X handle, of course, Radix Verum, and you are at not Radix. Forgive me for being dumb. I don't know what that means, Radix Verum.
Oh, it's Latin for the root of truth.
Uh-huh.
It's kind of an old internet handle that stuck with me, I guess.
Got it. Well, that's excellent. That's excellent. And so, Ken, you've covered tons of stuff with FBI malfeasance, and this Whitmer case, it really captured my attention because I was looking into it during a time where, the FBI essentially tried to do the same thing to me with the Port of Charleston and didn't, I was luckier than Adam Fox and all of his alleged people who have been jammed up there, but this is an insane circumstance. And I used a term in the title here, the stipulated reality of FBI lawfare. And what I'm talking about and want to get you guys input on is that in my experience in court, the facts and actual reality, the tangible things that we all believe we can see and touch, those don't matter. What matters is the stipulated, agreed upon facts that get written down in court in the so-called record. These stipulated facts become the stipulated reality is what I was talking about. So Ken, what was the development that happened, this week? Everybody is, kind of maybe lost interest in this almost. What can you tell us?
Yeah, no, you're spot on with your description of the legal system, and this case is just smacking example of that. Basically what we had here is, I'm sure Christina could explain better than me, but you had 12 defendants, and I think there were 13 or 14 undercover FBI informants, undercover agents who were just circling them, prodding them, poking them, encouraging them to formulate a plot. This is in the summer of 2020 during all the lockdowns, and it's just militia guys that are trying to organize in the event of like a societal collapse. They're drinking around the campfires at night, just blowing off steam, talking a lot of crap, and the FBI informants amassed hundreds of hours of recordings of them talking about the governor, but the court only allowed certain specific excerpts to be played. And that was kind of the thrust of this recent appeals court decision. The defendants weren't allowed to play certain statements by the informants, like urging them to formulate a plan. And the Sixth Circuit just ruled that, yes, the lower court judge was incorrect in blocking the defendants from playing these full statements. However, we're not going to overturn the convictions anyways because, a jury decided. That's pretty much, Christina, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's my understanding of basically what happened.
Yeah, that's exactly what they said in their opinion, and all of them were in agreement on this. So there was not one that was dissenting from this, from their decision here. And they said that, yes, they admit that the trial court made an error, but that error was quote unquote harmless. Well, it's certainly not harmless because that first federal trial, ended in 2 men being acquitted, Daniel Harris and Brandon Caserta, and they had a mistrial on Adam and Barry, meaning they were very close to acquitting Adam and Barry as well. They just weren't quite sure. But had they been given the full scope of those recordings and been able to listen to the things that the informants were saying at these meetings that were put on by the FBI, that would have given them, I think, the push over the line to get them acquitted as well. So it's incredibly disturbing to me, because going through this opinion and reading it, number one, it's written exactly like a prosecutor. Like, who wrote this? You know, the mindset of these judges, most of these judges, by the way, are former federal prosecutors, so they tend to have a bias in favor of the prosecution. Certainly at trial, deference is given to the government, to the prosecutors who have the burden of proof. So really, deference should be paid to the defendants, who are supposed to be presumed innocent until proven guilty, but it's actually the other way around in the court system. And so it's written exactly like a federal prosecutor would write something. It reads just like Nils Kessler's criminal complaint, where they kind of hone in on erroneous information, right? They're talking about like posts that Barry was making on Facebook that were public posts where he is kind of raging against politicians. Well, going back 10 years into his internet history, you're going to see similar rhetoric. That doesn't mean he's predisposed to commit a crime or engage in this kind of plot. And you can tell from the beginning, the first sentence is Adam Fox and Barry Croft hatched an elaborate plan. And I'm thinking, oh, how elaborate was this? While they're getting drunk and stoned on the FBI's dime as the FBI drives them around on these excursions across the country. You know, that elaborate. They say in this opinion that Steve Robeson, who is one of the main informants that really orchestrated this entire thing, he became an informant in October of 2019. The investigation into the Wolverine Watchman didn't happen until March of 2020. But they say Robeson was invited to this meeting in June 2020, the Dublin meeting. No, actually, he wasn't invited. Robeson called and shared the meeting. It was his meeting. And this was put on at the Drury Inn and Suites in Columbus, Ohio. The government called it the Dublin meeting. They also referred to it as a national attack planning meeting. This was put on by the FBI. Who paid for the conference room? The FBI informant. And so they're still going with this narrative that like these guys, these anti-government groups, as they say, were coming together organically, that they were organizing, and it's simply not true. So reading this and seeing them continue to lie, it just makes me so angry. But then again, it's also not surprising. It's kind of par for the course for the entire process so far. They've never had a fair chance. So why would we expect the Sixth Circuit to give them a fair shake?
You know, it's a good point, because we hear a lot of people saying like, oh, this will be overturned on appeal. And I agree with you. My experience over the last 8 years tells me you really shouldn't expect anything different in the appellate court than what you see in the district court. But before we go further down this road, Christina, tell us a bit about Kidnap and Kill, the film that you have directed. Or why don't we do this? Why don't we play the trailer for everyone and they can watch it and then you'll tell us about it. Is that
Yeah, that sounds good. I would just play the first 2 minutes and 20 seconds. People don't need to hear my little spiel at the end, but it's there for reasons.
Okay.
And we go now to new developments in the plot to kidnap and kill Governor Gretchen Whitmer.
13 suspects arrested, including 7 alleged members of a right-wing militia group
who are preparing to kidnap and possibly kill me.
The defense claims the FBI, through undercover agents and informants, were behind the plan, and that Fox and Croft were duped into going along with it.
What the FBI did is unconscionable.
It's almost like they had their evidence, had their facts, and created the crime.
let's get a plan together to attack our governors all at the same time.
We can cloud the water. We can send everybody into disarray and chaos.
He's the perfect chameleon. He knew exactly what to say, how to say it.
Dan Chappell was the driving force of it all.
He was there to lead. He was there to orchestrate.
I think he viewed us as an opportunity.
Everything here is a lie or a manipulation.
It's almost impossible to fathom how brazen, how bold, and how dangerous these individuals were.
Thank you to the fearless FBI agents.
Inside, the takedown of the FBI agent who led one of the nation's biggest domestic terror investigations.
If you can think of a synonym for patriots, think of terrorists.
You're seeing the exact same methodology being used without difference.
Everything about this case was a terrorism attack, I agree, by the FBI.
Unlimited power, unlimited money. My biggest fear is being, called a terrorist from the nation that I love.
Your entire life could be taken away from you for something you didn't do.
What they've done is destroying lives.
And I will not stop until he's free or I die.
A saying we have in my office is don't let the facts get in the way of a good story.
Yeah.
There you go.
Don't let the facts get in the way of a good story. Gotta love the FBI.
Wasn't that one of the statements that wasn't allowed in the federal trial?
No, it was kind of allowed in, but he didn't take the stand. So Impala did not testify at trial. So he couldn't be questioned about his statement, what he was saying to Steve Robeson in the interrogation that clip is from. That is from the FBI interrogating their own informant after they burned him as an informant, lied and said he was acting as a quote unquote double agent for the defense, and then proceeded to protect him after they called him a double agent.
Wow.
Getting him off on jail for a gun charge. This is a man who is a career criminal, a felon. He was running around the country transporting explosives, materials, firearms, selling drugs, engaging in all kinds of criminal activity and predatory activity, all while the FBI is lying in their documents, saying that they've independently verified the information he is providing, saying that he doesn't have a criminal record. That, of course, was a lie.
Wow. I just want to let people know, Christina, you're going to be joining us for the sponsor exclusive segment, and people will be able to see that on substack.com/@KenSilva. Also on odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth, crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com, and subscribestar.com and patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. And Christina, you're certainly free to share that segment with your subscribers if you're on Substack or anything like that. I know you want people to go and visit the website for the film, and to tell people how they can support the film at knkfilm.com.
Yeah, so on our website, on the homepage there, the first thing that comes up is the trailer. Right under that, there's a little thing that says help fund the film in big all caps. You can click on that. That will take you to our Give, Send, Go fundraiser that we created for the documentary. People can donate there. And they can also, on our donate page on the website, which is just knkfilm.com/donate, we have a P.O. box as well, because I know some people were not wanting to donate electronically. So you can do so by mail if you want as well to our P.O. box, and you can support the film that way.
Excellent. And when do you expect it to be released?
It is a good question. I have learned my lesson of guesstimating timeframes. I will say conservative estimate would be around summer to fall of this year.
The case is still going on, so obviously it's difficult. It's a moving target. And, I wanted to ask you, because you mentioned that specifically in the Adam Dean Fox case, that it was a hung jury or a mistrial or something like that. I had followed some of that more closely than other aspects. There was a time in the trial where Adam Fox's attorney was cross-examining FBI Special Agent, I believe his name was Christopher Long. And Agent Long describes how the FBI's using UCOs, undercover operatives, who are out in the field interacting with members of the public on the internet. These are sometimes actors and just regular people who get hired to do these things. Do you have any insights, Christina, into why? I mean, if you just told us the FBI, they have a murderer or some kind of criminal, but instead of putting that guy in jail, they're hiring him to jam up Adam Fox, who seems to be sitting in a basement smoking weed, playing World of Warcraft. Why do I have this right? And if so, why are they doing that?
Well, they do that to perpetuate their own existence, to manufacture these narratives of, kind of the domestic threat right now is their big one, where we have to be concerned about basically Americans coming together and engaging in things they've always done, like militia training and, free speech. But this is supposed to be the big threat now that they're hyping up. They always have a different one. They have these quotas inside the FBI where their career advancement is fast-tracked if they get these big cases. The agent who worked on this case, one of the main handling agents, Jason Chambers, he was talking about how he was going to be first of all, he said he was going to run the case as a TEI, whether he got approval or not. That's a terrorism enterprise investigation. And at the same time he's working this case, he is running his own private cyber intelligence, cybersecurity firm called Exa Intel.
Yes,
and his private company is seeking, contracts with the government to advise on domestic terror cases. They're seeking contracts with state governments to provide venue monitoring, right? So it's interesting in the Whitmer case how you had a, quote, storming of the Capitol in Lansing at the same time that this FBI agent is marketing his venue monitoring and event monitoring company. And he's in emails talking to other FBI agents where he's talking about how he's reallocating FBI resources so that his transition to the private sector will be smooth. So he's literally talking about using FBI resources to kind of get Exa Intel off the ground, maybe even using CHSs to help him with Exa Intel. He has an account called @Ravaging on Twitter that is talking about having foreknowledge of the case, saying, watch Michigan. So there's kind of this financial incentive layer to this for the FBI agents themselves. And for these guys, they just kind of get caught up in something. As you talked about, they have OCEs, that's online covert employee. And that is somebody, typically an FBI agent, who's operating false personas online. So they're pretending to be somebody else. One of the agents in the case, Mark Schwiers, was posing as a man named Mark Woods, who was interested in being in a militia group. And he gets introduced to Adam via his girlfriend, Adam's girlfriend, Amanda Keller. At the time, she's in communication with one of these OCEs, an FBI agent named Lauren Hastings. She's pretending to be a woman named Elise Marie, and she says that Mark Woods is her boyfriend. This is an undercover FBI agent. So that's how they make that introduction. Now, these OCEs are also doing other things, right? So they're on Facebook, they're on the various social media platforms, and they're creating group pages for like pro 2A groups, or they're pretending to be like the head of a militia in a certain state, like a head of a state chapter of a militia group. They're administering Facebook pages for like the 3%ers or a 3%er group. That's what they're doing. And so it really makes you kind of ask the question of, why is the FBI dedicating so many resources to targeting American citizens in such a manipulative way? Befriending somebody online, getting close to them, pretending to be somebody you're not. Also, we just recently published Steve Robeson's CHS file, Robeson being the pedophile FBI informant that was used in this case. And in that document, they talk about how Robeson becomes an informant in October of 2019. They give this cover story for him where they say that he came forward to his local law enforcement in Wisconsin because he heard, quote, threats of violence against law enforcement amongst 3%er groups. And so he was just being a good Samaritan. This is not actually what happened. He was flagged under something called Bronze Griffin, which was a program run by social media companies to basically flag keywords, and this information would be given to law enforcement without a warrant. And so that's how he becomes an informant. And they talk about that he was given access to a database of targets. So this database is coming from, all of these guys in this case were probably in this database because of things they said on Facebook, really using certain code words that were being flagged.
Wait. Let me slow you down a second, because you are a fire hose of information on this subject. This is amazing. So the FBI has a catalog of targets that they then take criminals to entrap, and the targets are idiots sitting in their basement smoking weed, playing World of Warcraft, making loose comments on Facebook. And so they use felons and dangerous criminals. So, okay, and all of this you're learning because it's coming out in documents in court, right? How come the court isn't saying, hold the phone, FBI, what the hell are you doing? They're just stipulating this reality where all of this stuff is fine and Adam Dean Fox goes to jail.
Well, yeah, the FBI in these cases, especially terrorism cases, the FBI controls the government controls the entire thing. They're picking your lawyers, your court-appointed public defenders or public pretenders, and they pick your jury. They're literally picking the jury pool, which will then be whittled down. And in the Whitmer case, they picked it from primarily Democrat areas. So they already have ways of stacking the deck. For example, they did not produce Robeson's CHS file in the discovery in the federal case. That was not provided as it was supposed to be. That actually came from another individual, and it was connected to a different case in Wisconsin, because at the time that Robeson was working for the FBI, setting these guys up, he also was pretending to run a fake charity called Race to Unite Races. And he ended up defrauding a couple out of a vehicle that he said he needed to use for going after child traffickers and working with law enforcement. So he had this whole story that he was telling many people, which was that his charity organization went after pedos and child traffickers, and that he worked with law enforcement. He talked about going on raids in Mexico to save these kids. Meanwhile, this guy is a pedophile himself. He is a convicted sex offender. He got a teenage girl pregnant. And so you could not make this up if you wanted to. So he is doing these things. He's, selling drugs out of his home, like doing all these illegal things. He defrauds this couple out of an SUV. Of course, they try to get compensation for that or to take him to court. And so that is how his CHS file was actually disclosed. They didn't even produce it in the actual Whitmer case. So they withheld that evidence, which is, par for the course for how this goes.
It's unbelievable, really.
They will provide terabytes of quote unquote discovery. And the way that it is produced is that nothing is labeled. It's all given random numbers and letters, okay, in the file name. And then they provide duplicates in there. They'll bury things. They make it very, very hard, knowing, of course, that the public defenders they have a heavy caseload already, and they're on a timeline here, a short timeline to review all of this stuff. And so you're supposed to find the needle in the haystack, but then at the same time, they're not actually meeting the Brady requirements of producing all of the exculpatory information. They hide a lot of stuff. And there were things that happened that even though their lawyers didn't pursue, like when Barry was arrested, his phones were wiped, and nobody ever pursued recovering that data. You'd think that would be important.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're describing lawfare, and obviously when they control all these aspects, the prosecutors, the jury, the evidence, it's impossible. Ken, you've been following FBI malfeasance for as long as you've been a journalist. What do you make of these developments? And I mean, what about Dan Bongino and Pam Bondi? Do they know about all this? Yeah, you're laughing, obviously, but tell us what you think.
Well, that's one of the reasons why this case is so important and why we need to still pay attention to these guys who are in prison, is because these cases happen all the time, but 99% of the time, the defendant will just strike a plea deal because he's looking at 20 years in a supermax. And so the discovery will never come to light about all the FBI malfeasance, all the informant trickery. These men were courageous enough to go to trial and not break, and that's the main reason why we know all the stuff that went down. So that's why I'm not going to forget about this anytime soon. My reporting interests aside, this is just too important of a case for me, and I think this is a good time to actually talk about. I've been working with Christina for over 2 years now. I just realized that this morning. We started working together in February 2023 when she was interviewing Barry and Adam from their county jail. They had been convicted and they were giving video statements for the weaponization subcommittee that had just been set up to investigate supposedly these exact types of cases. And I sent the story I did in our group chat on Twitter. But basically, she gets these video statements. I publish them on HeadlineUSA, and the very next day, Adam and Barry are transferred to the Supermax, either in Terre Haute or Florence. I think they were actually split up at the time.
Yep.
Wow.
So direct retaliation for Christina's
Wow.
and my publication. So
Wow.
this is personal to both of us. I think, obviously, to Christina.
Yeah. And at the same time that was happening, my house was swatted. Literally at the same time, Adam and Barry were being sent to Supermax prisons across the country right after the day after he had published their
Wait a minute.
statements.
I want to hear all about this, but we're butting up against the end of our introductory segment here. So we're just getting to the meat of this conversation. I think people are going to want to stay with us and join us on substack.com/@KenSilva. If you're not yet supporting Ken, please get on there. You're going to be able to see our upcoming sponsor exclusive segment in just 5 minutes. Sponsors on odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth. And crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com or Subscribestar or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth will also be able to join us. And I want to remind people to definitely get over to kandkfilm.com. That's Kidnap and Kill. That is Christina's film about the Fed-napping Gretchen Whitmer kidnapping plot, an insane story that people have not been paying close enough attention to. We're going to be back. Stay with us, everyone, and join us in the sponsor exclusive segment. We'll be right back. Thanks for watching.